There's a type of person who reaches a point where words stop working. Conversations, explanations, announcements, none of it feels like enough. So they go quiet. They stop posting. They stop answering. They pull away from everything familiar. And most people around them call it strange, dramatic, an overreaction. But psychology has a different reading entirely. What looks like disappearing is one of the most deliberate acts a human mind can perform. And by the end of this, you will understand exactly why some people have to vanish before they can change. Let's break down the real psychology behind what happens when a person withdraws from their entire environment, and why that withdrawal is often the beginning of something, not the end. Before anything else, there is something psychologists call context collapse. Every environment you live inside carries an invisible ceiling. The people around you have formed a fixed idea of who you are. And that image, held in the minds of people who know you, becomes a kind of gravity. You can try to change, you can say the words, but when the people around you have a version of you already locked in, every step you take toward something new gets quietly pulled back toward what they expect. Psychologists call this social identity constraint. The group you belong to regulates your behavior, not through force, but through expectation. And for some people, the only way to escape the ceiling is to leave the room entirely. There is a second reason, and this one is quieter. The modern environment is designed to occupy every available second of your attention. Notifications, conversations, obligations. Scroll, repeat. What never gets scheduled is silence. And silence is where self-examination lives. Psychologists have found that the brain cannot meaningfully reflect on itself while it is also managing external input. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for identity, long-term decision-making, and self-concept, requires low stimulation conditions to process deeply. Disappearing is not running away from life. For many people, it is the first time they have been quiet enough to hear what life has actually been telling them. Here is what nobody talks about when they talk about transformation. Before the change, there is usually a period of exhaustion. Psychologist Irving Goffman called it impression management, the continuous work of presenting yourself in ways that meet the expectations of everyone around you. Most people do this unconsciously. They soften certain parts of themselves at work. They amplify others with family. They perform a slightly different version of themselves in every room they walk into. They reach a point where maintaining every version of themselves for every audience feels like a full-time job they never applied for. Disappearing is, in part, the relief of stopping the performance, even temporarily. This is the part most people never expect. True change demands loss, not just of habits, but of your old self. The brave ones allow themselves to mourn who they were before becoming who they're meant to be. Psychologists call this identity mourning, the grief that accompanies becoming someone new. Disappearing isn't weakness. It's the courage to grieve your old self before stepping into the new. Your environment is not neutral. It's an invisible architect, constantly nudging you back into your old self through cues, habits, and people. Most people try to change while staying in the same environment that created them. The ones who disappear aren't running away. They're being neurologically strategic. They remove themselves from the old architecture so they can finally build something new. And then they come back. Not always, not everyone, but the ones who do return differently. There's a concept in psychology called narrative identity. the internal story a person uses to explain who they are and how they got there. It is the through line that connects your past self to your present one. When someone disappears, truly steps out of the narrative others have built for them, they gain something rare, the ability to revise the story. Not to erase what happened, but to reinterpret it. The person who returns from that kind of absence isn't performing a new identity. They have restructured the one underneath. Here's what most people get wrong about the person who vanishes. They assume something broke. But psychology tells a different story. The person who disappears intentionally, who goes quiet, who steps back, who stops performing, is not falling apart. They are finally listening to the identity that was never given space. Disappearing is not the absence of courage. It is what courage looks like before anyone else can see it. Subscribe, because here we don't just learn facts, we understand minds.